Have you ever been filming a video and got like 10 minutes in and then realized that you didn't actually press the record button? Hi, I'm Tia, and today I am so excited to share with you my top 15 favorite books of 2020. So this year I am not going to put my favorites in any particular order. It was just too hard for me to decide which one was my absolute favorite. So I'm going to talk to you about these in no particular order and just sort of go, I have them like stacked up over here in a stack from smallest to largest, and we're going to go like that. I think I'm going to start with the ones that I don't actually own though, and I'll just have to pop pictures of them up. So the first one is actually kind of a cheat because it's a 3-book graphic novel trilogy. So it's 3 books in one. I'm going to count them all together. And that one is the March graphic novel trilogy by John Lewis. So this is a nonfiction graphic novel trilogy that follows John Lewis, and it starts out in the first volume as in his childhood back in Alabama, and it goes all the way up through his adulthood until he, is an older man in the last volume. And this book follows him as he just basically spends his entire life fighting for civil rights. It was such a great, impactful read. It is something that I think everyone in the United States should read. I'm so thankful that it was available at my library, and hopefully it's available at your library too. Yeah, it was compulsively readable. I learned so much from it, and I'm so glad that these are available in graphic novel format because I think that that will make it more of an accessible story to more people. And yeah, definitely go and check this one out. I can't recommend it enough. The other one that I borrowed from my library was The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane by Kate DiCamillo. So this one is probably like an elementary aged book is what I would categorize it as, but it definitely is one that would appeal to any age group. I loved it. I read it to my kids and they loved it. I bought a copy for my mom and she loved it too. It follows the journey of this China rabbit who at the beginning of the novel is very stuck up and very snobbish, but he goes on, like it says, a miraculous journey where he just learns so much and grows so much, not as a person, but as a rabbit, I guess you would have to say. And it's just an amazing, heartfelt story that had me in tears, and I think that anyone would enjoy this book, and I highly recommend it if you haven't read it already. Then the next one is a book that I had from NetGalley this year, and that is Kiss My Cupcake by Helena Hunting. This is a contemporary romance story that I just read at the absolute perfect time. This book was, I guess you would call it a rom-com, and it just hit me at the right spot in life where I just thought that this was the absolute perfect read. So this book just really reminded me, as with probably everyone on this list, just how and why I love reading. Every once in a while you will just read a book that just really does it for you, and I felt that way about this story. I loved the characters in this book. I loved the writing in this book. I loved the plot of this book. It made me laugh. It made me tear up. It just did everything for me. So this one follows 2 rival bar owners. The girl in the book owns a cocktails and cupcake bar, and the guy owns more of like a regular sports bar type thing, or maybe like a lumberjack bar. I'm not sure what you would categorize it as, but there's like axe throwing, there's a ton of plaid, and they sort of butt heads at the beginning because, like I said, they're more of rivals. They have really great witty banter. There's an awesome scene with her family that's really funny, and it just really worked for me. And if you are at all interested in contemporary romance or rom-coms, I would definitely check this one out. I think that this would make a great movie, and I hope that someday it gets made into one because I would definitely watch that if it came out. Okay, so now let's move into the stack of physical books that I do have copies of, and like I said, they're just stacked up over here from smallest to largest. So first one is Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery, and as I'm sure you know, if you've been watching my channel, this year in 2020, I hosted a read-along with Amanda, the Curly Reader, of this entire series, and I just fell in love with this book back in January. This book just meant so much to me. I loved Anne and I loved her story. The writing is absolutely beautiful. And this is the only book that I have ever done a solo book review for on my channel. It just really connected with me emotionally, and I will link that video down in the description box if you would like to go and check it out and hear more of why this book meant so much to me. I feel like if I start talking about it too much again in here that I will end up crying like I did in that video, and all happy things in this favorites video. So yeah, I love this video. I love this book. It has a really special place in my heart now, and I know it's one that I will reread. As you can see, like, I tabbed this up because it's just a fabulous book. I'm sure you already know what this book is about, and I probably don't need to say anything else about it, but it's great. It's wonderful. It was definitely the best out of the entire Anne series, and yeah, go read it if you haven't already. Next up is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This is another book that had been on my TBR for a while, and I was able to do a group read of this book during the Fall Into Reading Challenge with a bunch of awesome people who joined us over there on Instagram to chat about this book daily, as we did daily discussions about it. And so this book is a book that follows Dana, who is living in the 1970s in the United States, when she is transported back to the antebellum South to this family that she has a certain connection with, which you discover throughout the course of the book. And this book was just so well written, such a wonderful story. It was just so compulsively readable. I was so invested in Dana and what was happening to her in the past and in the present, with, you know, the relationships that were developing between her and the people that were in the past, and with her and her husband in this book. It was just a wonderful, wonderful story, and I think that it was so amazingly well written and well thought out, and it's definitely one that I would like to read again in the future. Probably not like anytime soon, because it definitely is a hard emotional story that takes a lot out of you, but I know I'm gonna want to revisit this one. If you haven't read this one already, I definitely recommend it. Well, obviously I recommend everything in this video, but this one for sure. Yeah, I think this will appeal to a lot of people, and that a lot of people would really enjoy the story. Next is Fever 1793 by Lori Halse Anderson. So this one is a middle grade story. Probably the upper end of middle grade is who I would recommend this book for, and of course adults as well. Obviously I'm an adult and I loved this book. So this follows I think she's 13 in the book, 13-year-old girl who is living in Philadelphia during the time of the yellow fever outbreak in 1793. And this is obviously a historical fiction book that is based on real life events. And I just found this so compelling and so interesting, probably because, well, one, it was a really well written book, and two, because we're going through our own pandemic right now. So it was really interesting to read about for that respect. And also I loved these characters. I rooted for them. I wanted the best for them. I think that is sort of what the theme for my favorites are. They have to be compulsively readable. They have to have great characters and great writing, and I guess hit me at exactly the right time period in my reading life. But this one I definitely recommend if you are into historical fiction. It is a quick, impactful read that I think you will just blow through and really enjoy your time with. Next is Becoming Naomi Leone by Pam Munez Ryan. So Pam Munez Ryan is my favorite middle grade author, and I read several of her books in 2020, and two of them actually made it on this list. And I'm hoping to be able to read all the rest of her books that I haven't read already in 2021. I think I have two more left before I complete her backlist. But this book I absolutely fell in love with. Pam Munez Ryan is an absolutely gifted writer. There's just something so magical about her stories. Like the other books on this list, she's compulsively readable. Everything that she writes is just magical. These characters in here I completely fell in love with. So the main character in this book is named Naomi, and I absolutely fell in love with her. She has my heart, and I was so invested in her story and everything that happened. She is a little girl who lives with her brother and her grandmother, and one day her mother resurfaces and sort of has a negative effect on Naomi's life. And anyway, a big journey happens in the story, and you just get to learn a lot about Naomi and family and sort of learning about where you fit in. It has all of those vibes, and I might cry if I keep talking about it too. This was just, to me, a really emotionally impactful book, and I definitely recommend it as well. This is Little Lord Fauntleroy by Frances Hodgson Burnett. That is quite a mouthful. I fell in love with this book this year, like everything else on this list. This is one that I'd been wanting to read for quite some time, and I honestly wasn't expecting to love this one as much as I did, but I fell in love with Cedric in this book, Little Lord Fauntleroy. So this is about a little boy named Cedric. He's 7 years old, and he is living in the United States with his mother. His father has passed away. When he gets a letter from England from his grandfather saying that he is actually next in line to the dukedom, and he had no idea that his father was, you know, that his grandfather was a duke, or that his father, you know, had been the son of a duke, or any of that. And so it just follows him in his journey as he learns all of these things about his family. He gets to meet his grandfather. But the real beauty of the story is Cedric, and how much he loves other people, and how he thinks so kindly of everyone that he encounters. Oh my goodness, why am I about to cry again? He's just such a lovable little boy, and I think that as an adult, sometimes you lose that wide-eyed optimism that you have as a child. You sort of become jaded the more that you experience disappointments in life. And so to read this and to remember like that joy and openness that you used to have as a child, and that I see in my own 7-year-old, was just such an emotional experience for me. And I want to reread this right now and go hug my 7-year-old. Yeah, definitely read this book. It's just wonderful, and Cedric is one of my favorite characters of all time. Next is Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. This is another children's classic. This was my first time reading this book, I think. Now, I mean, I've read a ton of books in my life, and I know that some people think it's weird when you can't remember if you've read something, but honestly, I mean, if I read something before the age of 20, then it's a possibility that I might not remember that I read it, because, I mean, that was over 20 years ago, and I didn't have Goodreads then. I didn't track what I was reading, so it's a definite possibility that I read this one when I was a child and just forgot. All that to say, this is a story of a horse whose name is Black Beauty, and it's taking place during Victorian England times, and it follows Black Beauty's entire life journey. And it's another one that was really emotional, a beautiful story, incredibly well written. You fall in love with Black Beauty and you want only the best for him, and so he sometimes goes through some really hard things, and the other horses that he meets during his lifetime experience some mistreatment, and that's really hard to read about, but also really eye-opening. And man, this was just a really, really great, another emotionally impactful book for me, and it meant a lot to me during my 2020 reading year. Now we're going to mix it up a little bit. This one's a little bit different than the other ones that I have been talking about, and this one is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This is a pretty large fantasy book, and this one is different in I think almost all the other ones I've mentioned. This one didn't necessarily have like a huge emotional impact for me. This one just was an amazingly well-written fantasy story that kept me so engrossed in the plot and everything that was happening, and the development of the world was amazing. It was one of those books where it was just amazing world building and amazing plot, and I had such a good time reading it. So yeah, this one is really hard to explain, but it's a fantasy that deals with color and and this thing called breaths, and so people are born with a certain amount of breaths, and the more breaths you have, the more power you have, and the more colors on the color spectrum you can see. It's really sort of complicated, but not hard to read. I think that once you start reading it and you get into the world building, that you won't find it to be that complex. You'll really enjoy it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more Brandon Sanderson, hopefully in 2021. I think that sometimes his books, for me personally, can seem a little bit intimidating because I know that I'm going to have to, you know, build a new world in my brain with him as I read along, and it's not going to be something that's in my own world that I already know about, but that's the fun in it, right? And that's what makes it such a great book, is that he is so great at his world building and plot development. Yeah. So Warbreaker, if you haven't read it already and you're interested in fantasy, I would definitely recommend this one. Next is the other Pam Munez Ryan on this list, and that is Echo. This is an amazing middle grade book. Now, it is rather large, but it's so just compulsively readable, and you will fly through this book. So this is a mixture of historical fiction with a little bit of a magical element twist in here. It's basically following this magical harmonica. So this is a harmonica on the front that links these 3 different timelines together and shows up in each one of these different timelines that's following a different child and sort of links their lives together. And so it's broken up into 3 different sections, one for each child that you follow. And I loved every single section in here. I loved every single child in here. This book was magical and wonderful and readable and just so fantastic. And you know, I buddy read this with Rainey, and I had forgotten that we buddy read this together, Rainey, but that was such a fun time when we did that. And yeah, it's a great book. I want to reread it already, and I definitely recommend this book to everyone for sure. Then I have 2 by Catherine Center, and the first one is How to Walk Away. This one is a women's fiction novel, is what I would categorize it as. It does have a romantic element to it, but it's not the main plot of the story. It's definitely following Maggie and her life's journey. So at the beginning, Maggie is with her boyfriend who has just gotten his pilot's license, and convinces her to go up with him in this plane, even though she absolutely hates flying, and he knows she absolutely hates flying. And then everything just sort of spirals from there. And I don't want to tell you any more than that if you haven't already read it. I hope that you don't know anything else from that. It's just such a wonderful story, and I loved Maggie and her journey so much. I want to reread this one too. It was just so good. Catherine Center's writing was compulsively readable, and yeah, I want to read everything that she's ever written. She definitely knows how to tell stories and how to make you feel so invested in what she is telling you about her characters. And the other one by her that I read this year and absolutely loved was Things You Save in a Fire. Now, between the 2 of these, I would say that I enjoyed this one a little bit more, but I did give both of them 5 stars, and they definitely are 2 of my favorites from this year, so I wanted to share both of them. This one I would also categorize as women's fiction, even though, like the other one, it does have a romantic subplot. It's more following Cassie and her journey in life. So she is a firefighter, and in this book she is relocating to a different fire station that is in a smaller town, and is sort of like always had this like boys club mentality, and so they're not used to having women firefighters on their squad, and so she has to deal with the way that they treat her and trying to fit in there and get everyone to see her for who she is and what she can do, rather than just for the woman on the squad. And it's just another one where the story is completely wonderful. Catherine Center in this one, I think, takes a character that you don't completely love at the beginning of the book and puts her through such a journey that by the end you've fallen in love with her, and you're not even sure where that happened along the way, but it definitely happened for me in this one. So yeah, another great one. If you're interested in women's fiction, I would definitely give Catherine Center a try. So The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James was another fabulous read for me this year. It's one that was compulsively readable, definitely creepy. It is a dual timeline story that is following one young woman in the present day. She is trying to investigate the disappearance of her aunt. So her aunt disappeared from this hotel, so she travels there, gets a job there, and tries to figure out what happened to her aunt all those years before. There's mystery, there's some other elements. I mean, you probably know what elements I'm talking about because this book has been everywhere lately, but I just feel like I don't want to spoil it for you because I went into this book, you know, at the beginning of the year and I had no idea what was going to happen, and I just feel like that made it so much more wonderful for me. But yeah, this one definitely creeped me out. You probably heard me say this before, but I was reading this at night and got so scared. I didn't want to go downstairs and put it in the freezer because there was no one down there and I didn't want to go down there alone. So I hid it under my laundry, like deep in my laundry basket. And yeah, because I didn't want it anywhere near me while I was asleep. I know that's silly. I'm a grown woman. I don't know what's wrong with me. But yeah, if you can handle a little bit of creepy, you like mysteries with dual timelines, wonderful writing, just, yeah, give Simone St. James a try. She is amazing and I can't wait to see what she comes out with next. Very last one on this list, I feel like might be a slightly controversial pick. It's definitely gotten mixed reviews over the last year, but it was definitely one of my favorites, so it had to be on my list, and that is The Switch by Beth O'Leary. I know recently a lot of people have been talking about this book and how they didn't think that it deserved to be on the Goodreads romance choice this year for the top Goodreads awards, whatever they're called. And whether or not you agree that this is a romance or you think that it's women's fiction, it's still a great book, and that's why it's on my favorites, is because whatever genre it is, I loved reading it. So this is a story that follows a young woman who decides to switch places with her grandmother. She goes to live in this small town in her grandmother's house, and her grandmother goes to live in her flat in London, and they basically just take over each other's responsibilities for this 6-week time period. And it's their two journeys in life and everything that they are going through, and it's a wonderful story. I fell in love with the grandmother. I thought she was so funny and so lovable, and this book, like the other ones on this list, is compulsively relatable with wonderful characters and engrossing writing and just people who I wanted to know in real life. I already want to reread this one. I'm looking forward to what Beth O'Leary is coming out with in the future. If it's anything like this book, you know, if it like hits me in all the feels like this book did, then I can't wait to read it. And I would say that this is more women's fiction, honestly, than romance. Now, they both do have, both of the two women both have like a romantic plot in their, you know, separate storylines. But it's more of following their journey and the family dynamics that's happening between them and the mother in the story. So there's like a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter. So 3 generations of women and what all they're going through in this book. Yeah, so sorry, the sun is getting a little bit weird. So sorry if the angle just changed. Okay, so those are my top 15 favorite books of 2020. I loved all these books, as I'm sure you can tell from what I've said in this video, but I would love to hear in the comments if you have read any of these books and if you love them as much as I did, and then also let me know what your top 5, 10, 15 favorite books of the year were. I'm always looking to check out more books, and hopefully if they're ones that I already own, then they're ones that I can throw on my TBR for 2021. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you're all doing well, and I will see you next time.